Good afternoon and welcome to the episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. I'm your host, Terrance Biggs. It is Wednesday. It is time to get smarter. You know him, you love him. El Segundo, California's favorite son, also the pride of Cal State Northridge, and when not being the favorite son and the pride of the managing editor of Last Word on college football, Tony Siracusa. What's going on, Tone?
How you doing, T Biggs?
Not bad, not bad. I think I tagged you in this. Did you see what the Lakers are building their I think no, I think it's a Sparks. They're building a practice facility in El Segundo.
hmm Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, this town of 13,000 people, which has hard, definitive borders around it, it doesn't just kind of blend into everything else. Actually has the practice facility for the Lakers, uh, for the Clippers, and for the Kings, and now we'll also for the Sparks. And you're like, well, wait, how does that fit? Look, here's El Segundo, it's right here, and on the west side of El Segundo, literally is the ocean. Can't build out there. There is the beach. On the Make sure I get my directions correct. On the north side of El Segundo is LA Airport. Can't build out there. Doesn't work. On the south side of El Segundo is the Chevron oil refinery for which El Segundo is named the
Second.
second. It is the second Chevron oil refinery in the West that was built back in the 1930s. It's huge. Then on the eastern side is what's called Sepulveda Boulevard, which is a massive major thoroughfare that will get you from the San Fernando Valley all the way down to Torrance near Palos Verdes. On the other side of Sepulveda, technically is still El Segundo. When you live in El Segundo, it's not really. It's like whatever. There's a there used to be some aerospace industry over there. Um, there is, believe it or not, an Air Force base, but really it's only office spaces. It's not, what you think of as, an Air Force base. It's offices. Um, Technically, though, it is still El Segundo, and that's where these training facilities are going. Last time I was in El Segundo, which, oh gosh, 6 years ago now, there are all of these things right on that Sepulveda Boulevard that did not exist growing up there. There's, some fast food places, there's a supermarket. All that used to be there was some of this aerospace and a little pitch and putt golf course, where you could practice your pitch game and your putting game. The lakes at El Segundo, I think they call it. And that was pretty much all that was there. And that's what we grew up with. Just on the other side of Sepulveda Boulevard used to be what was called Standard Stadium, because Chevron Oil used to be Standard Oil. It was Standard Stadium, one of the two little league fields in town, and which housed the Tony Siracusa led Indians of the minor leagues, and then the Tigers when I was up in the major leagues of El Segundo Little League. The other side of town on the bluffs overlooking the beach was Candlestick Park, which had the National League for El Segundo Little League. Two little leagues in one small city like that. But
Nice.
so all of these places that, it's like, oh, it's in El Segundo. It is. It's on the other side of Sepulveda Boulevard, which native El Segundoans don't really consider El Segundo. It's just, yeah, that stuff over there.
Now, the the last time you went, are you surprised how much the city has grown?
Uh, a little bit because it's limited in how it can grow because of those borders. The population can't really grow too much because there are city ordinances that limit the size of any apartment complexes.
Oh, wow.
You can't have, I think, more than a three-story apartment complex, maybe two-story, maybe three. Um, so you can't really grow up can't grow out because of those hard borders. So it's a population of 13,000. The businesses inside that downtown El Segundo, not an exaggeration, is about 4, maybe 5 blocks long.
Oh,
Not 4 or 5 miles, 4 or 5 blocks. Back in the day when we used to go to Joe's sporting goods store to get our spikes for, baseball season and our new gloves and whatnot, or go to El Tarasco for some, cheap Mexican food, whatever the case may be. So it's changed in the businesses that are there. But and certainly along that border area, the face of it has changed. The city itself, yeah, not so much.
uh, now we have, I guess Sam Pittman was
Yep.
fired from Arkansas, and I never thought I would say this name ever again. Bobby Petrino resurfaces, motors on in.
Motors. Oh, I see what you did there. I like that. Motors on in.
Sans co-ed. No,
Got his engines revving,
see, he is looking to, hit the ground running, just
yep,
not falling into a ditch with somebody who's not his wife on the back of his bike. Anyway,
right?
from what I've read, it he really believes, and people close thinks that it would take 3 or 4 games for him to keep that job. There's no way he's keeping that job, correct?
No, I think there is a way for him to keep the job. I really do. I honestly do. Part of it is because Arkansas, who do you think you are? You're Arkansas. I mean, look, Pittman was 2-3 this season. He got blown out by Notre Dame. If he'd lost to Notre Dame, just a regular touchdown differential or whatever, maybe he keeps his job for another week or two. He's 32-34 overall and 14-29 in conference play. But that program is better now than it was 5 years ago when he took it over. It's in better shape. And what I don't understand is what your expectations are, right? The athletic director, Hunter Yurachek, came out earlier in the week and acknowledged that Pittman wasn't really working with the resources that he should have had in order to succeed. Well, then what'd you fire him for? What you're basically saying is it's not his fault. We didn't give him the financial investment. We didn't have the money, the NIL money. Um, we're not sure how we're spending our revenue sharing money, but yet you made him pay the price for it. What are you doing? His comment that said, you know, we're not playing in the third lane. The third lane is the high speed lane on most, 3 lane
Hmm.
highways, right? It's what are you doing then? It's he actually said that the Razorbacks are built to win in basketball and in baseball. He said, but we're not built to win in football because of the financial challenges we have. But you just made Pittman pay the price for that. What are you doing? So now you got Petrino, and look, he said, you're a check when talking to this booster, group, the touchdown club, or um, Pig Suey or whatever it's called, there was talking about they need a proven winner as the next head coach. Petrino won when he was there, right? They had scandals, obviously, but he won while he was there. And you look, Petrino has already gutted the defensive coaching staff, putting in some of his own guys. He's fired most of the defensive coaching staff as an interim, as a guy who, and this is why I say I think he's got a shot at the job. I don't think he's just the caretaker for the next 6 weeks, right? We're headed into week 6. We're nearly halfway through the regular season. which is astonishing in and of itself. This goes fast, man. This is high speed. But I think he's looking to kind of build his own encampment. Look, some of the names that Razorbacks insiders are throwing around are obviously Petrino, Rhett Lashley from SMU. What are you kidding? Why would Lashley leave SMU for that job? Yeah, they're not getting any of the TV revenue out of the ACC, but it doesn't matter at SMU. That's a cash rich school. He can have whatever he wants there. Why would he leave that to go to a school which its own athletic director says we're not challenging in football because we don't have the financial resources? Um, John Summerall, the Tulane coach. What are you kidding? Summerall's going to get his pick of any job in the Southeast, whether it be the ACC or the SEC. You can have the Auburn job, by next season without anyone blinking at it. Alex Golish, all right, maybe, the USF coach. And here's one that they didn't throw in that I'm throwing in. Dan Mullen. He's out
I
at
can see
UN.
it.
He's got his first year at UNLV. He doesn't picture his future long term at UNLV. He wants back on the big show, back on the big stage. Um, Dan is one of those guys who, he spends 15 minutes doing something and he is a self-proclaimed expert at it at that point. So, um, but all guys like Lashley and Summerall, what are you kidding? You have zero chance of getting those guys. I'm not sure where Arkansas thinks it's headed.
I look at it, and I always thought that Arkansas would have a lot more money because of the Walton family
Sure,
contributions, but
sure.
and like Tyson Foods is right there in
Mm-hmm,
Arkansas, and like you
mm-hmm.
said, Summerall is in New Orleans. There is no way on God's green earth will Summerall give up New Orleans for Fayetteville. Sorry, that just
Right. He'll give it up for some other
yes.
places that may not sound geographically appealing, but the job is geographically appealing, right?
Exactly. And it seems as though Arkansas placed all of its eggs in the John Caliparian basketball basket.
Right. Yeah. 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 And Calipari is certainly going to be dominating the financial resources that Arkansas has to use.
Now, you mentioned there's a UCLA update. I know that Tino Sunseri was fired as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Technically, they say he mutual agreement to depart, whatever. That's just a nice way of saying we shoved him out the door. Um, so Sunseri got 4 games as offensive coordinator. The offense is abysmal. Um, but what what did you expect? I mean, again, look, yes, he was the offensive coordinator at Indiana last year in the huge year that the Hoosiers had, but he wasn't calling the plays. Signetti was calling the plays. So this was the first job he's ever had calling the offense himself under a head coach who had never been a head coach up until last year with Deshaun Foster. What the heck were you thinking was going to happen? So Sinceri is gone. Jerry Neuheisel, yes, Neuheisel, Rick's son, is technically not the offensive coordinator, but he will be calling the offensive plays. He is still the tight ends coach at UCLA, but he will be calling the plays starting this week and at Penn State this week at the Rose Bowl. So that'll be a hoot. Um, but it's strange. Look, they fired the defensive coordinator about 2 hours before they fired Deshaun Foster, on a Saturday night, after the loss to New Mexico. They had an off week. They got beat by Northwestern last week. Neuheisel Neuheisel is every bit UCLA, but his rise is interesting. because one, I mean, you want to talk about being every bit UCLA. He was actually born at UCLA Medical Center while his dad was an assistant coach under Terry Donahue. Uh, UCLA Medical Center, where Jerry was born, is probably 300 yards away from the football practice
Oh,
facilities. But and here's the next step in that. UCLA has gotten Jerry Neuheisel some help. They're bringing in a new offensive analyst to work with him on the schemes and the play calling, Noel Mazzoni.
oh,
Neuheisel and Mazzoni are long tied together. Neuheisel, of course, was a backup quarterback at UCLA behind Josh Rosen for quite a few years, but wanted to go into coaching. Um, so he was a grad assistant at Texas A&M under Mazzoni for a year before going back. And because when he was the backup quarterback at UCLA behind Rosen, his offensive coordinator was Bill Mazzoni. That was back in an era when Jim Mora changed coordinators every year. One year it was the defense, next year it was the offense, next year it was the defense, because he couldn't sit still. He was always so paranoid about getting fired. So he was changing coordinators constantly and doing stupid things like running the pistol offense. That went well. But anyway, so Mazzoni was his offensive coordinator. Mazzoni goes down to A&M as the offensive coordinator after Mora fires him. He hires Neuheisel as his grad assistant down there. So they have worked with each other before. Neuheisel went back to UCLA, was a grad assistant from 2018 to about 2020, then became the wide receivers coach for a few years, and then the tight ends coach and assistant head coach over the last 3 years. And now he's going to be calling the plays in the UCLA offense.
do you think New Heisel has a chance to become the full time?
No. UCLA is you just made that mistake. You just took a position coach who had never been a coordinator and made him head coach. You're not, you like Jerry. You would probably like whoever the new head coach is going to be to keep Jerry on staff, because Jerry is a bright young guy and the players really, really like this guy. And they have over all the years. And he's every bit UCLA. So you'd probably like him to still have a home there. And if you think about it, Chip Kelly kept him on staff, and then Deshaun kept him on staff, and you'd like the next guy to do it too. But short of winning the remaining 8 games on the schedule, no, he's not going to be the new head coach. But he's there. He's there to get a boost from Mazzoni and just kind of see what happens.
Do you think Jerry will possibly find a head coaching gig at like a group of five?
He
Or is it
could.
still too early?
I think I maybe here's what I can foresee is, depending upon who the new head coach is, Jerry gets the offensive coordinator job. He's been
Ah,
an offensive assistant now, because even when he was a grad assistant, he was working on the offense. So you're looking at probably 7, 8 years as an assistant on offense, and maybe he graduates to the offensive coordinator job under the new head coach.
hmm.
Certainly, if you're the search committee or you're Martin Jarmond or whoever, you're not going to mandate that to the new head coach, but you'd certainly expect them to throw it out there as a strong suggestion. And if you wind up getting a coordinator, look, if you wind up getting Jonathan Smith, he's going to bring his own staff.
Yeah.
That's what head coaches do. If you wind up hiring a coordinator, Tony White from Florida State or D'Anton Lynn from USC, they don't have their own staff. They got to build the staff. And so then maybe Neuheisel's a possibility. I like Jerry. I've talked with him many, many times. if you close your eyes and just listen, he sounds exactly like his dad.
I was
I
about to
mean,
ask that question.
you could not tell the difference. And he looks like his dad did when his dad played at UCLA. The big blonde hair, the surfer, looks exactly like Rick did when Rick played at
That's
UCLA in the 80s.
that's funny. Now, before we get into the games, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
As someone with a background not just in sports media, but who has a minor in political science, has there ever been a time where you see a candidate a potential candidate who would have absolutely zero personality but still wants to run office, like Paul Finebaum?
You know, look, I realize people ran with the article. We did. We had a quick little article on it, and our podcast network certainly devoted time to it. I don't even think it's real. I don't think it's serious. I listened to his rationale when he was talking to Outkick about why he is considering it. And, you know, he was just moved by certain recent events, but he wants to hear from President Trump. If President Trump says, Paul, you should run for the Senate seat, then he'll do it. I don't watch his show hardly ever, and for good reason. I don't buy into the shtick,
No.
but I also imagine this came out on what, Tuesday, Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
And I'm imagining, Tuesday's show was, all of his regulars calling out, but Paul, who will do your show, Paul? Because in his show, his name is spelled Pawwwwl, Paul. So, and I really imagine that was the net of it. Look, because you know who I really do think is going to run for the open Senate seat is Bruce Pearl,
Hmm.
the Auburn basketball coach. He all of a sudden announces his retirement, what, a month, but not even a month, just weeks before training camp starts for basketball, and announces his retirement, not his resignation that he's going to go do another coaching job, his retirement, so that it's set up so that they're stuck. They don't have time to go get another coach. So they move his son into that spot. But also because if he coached the season and it doesn't end until April, you're missing the primary calendar, the primary election calendar for the state of Alabama for next year's Senate election. So he had to get out now in order to be a viable candidate. And I do think he's going to do it. He has been unapologetically outspoken on his political views. And that's fine. I don't care. I really don't. I just do me a favor and don't tell LeBron to shut up and dribble
Pretty
anymore,
much.
right?
And
If you're going to coach and speak out on this stuff, that's fine. I don't begrudge you that. I only begrudge you that if you're telling other people keep politics out of sports and sports out of politics. That's fine. As long as everybody agrees to the same thing in terms of we're all going to speak out, then that's fine. We either all get to speak out or nobody gets to speak out, one or the other. We're not going to select who gets to and who doesn't.
you have people like Bomani Jones had if you go on Twitter or YouTube and look at his take on Bruce Pearl, it is the most spot on take in the
It
history of
is.
takes.
Yeah, I
Bruce
saw it.
Pearl is something. He is, I always find odd that someone with his strict beliefs are okay with coaching a whole bunch of black dudes, but they were a means to an end. And now that it's ended,
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, and it goes so far back, and that kind of topic, even growing up in a town that had virtually no minorities of any ethnicity, I wondered how all these young black players were okay playing in Ole Miss when the fans were still allowed to wave the Confederate flag at the games and things like that. So yeah, there's a long history of it, and you know, I'm not here to advocate other people's work, but there actually is a really good. It's probably about 7, 8 years old now. ESPN 30 for 30, written and narrated by Wright Thompson,
Yes.
who is just one of my favorite essayists. He's not a long form writer, he's an essayist, and he is really, really good at it. And he did one on basically life at Ole Miss and the evolution. It's called The Ghosts of Ole Miss.
Yep.
Um, and I actually, during the summer, read a book of his called The Barn, which goes back to, the famous murder, Emmett Till, and it's, but it talks about the social evolution, and awareness of the Delta, and frankly how it changed over time. But anyway, I digress far too much. I think Bruce Pearl will run. I think Bruce Pearl stands a chance to win the Senate seat because Tommy Tuberville did. So why, why can't Bruce Pearl? It's just, I mean, I'm not going to drag your show down into my politics, but it's
Oh, mine too.
it's do I agree with him on much of anything? No, I really don't. But I also understand, having worked in politics before, and worked on the GOP side of politics as well. I understand the geographic realities of different races. And so, and I mean political races, not ethnic races. Um, so I think he can win. I think Finebaum's not running. He just wanted people to love on him the next day on his show and say, "But Paul, can
Yes.
I host your show, Paul?"
I've known people who in the business who have talked to Paul, who have tried to check him on a few things, and apparently the off-camera Paul doesn't really try that. He will defer or try to walk away from a
Yeah,
confrontation.
yeah, he will. He will. Um, and I asked if I sadly had forgotten that the person was no longer among the living. But I asked if he won the Senate seat, if Harvey Updike was going to be one of his staffers. If you remember Mr. Updike, the one who killed the trees at Toomer's Corner.
Secretary of Intercollegiate Communication.
There you go. There you go. But I was reminded that Mr. Updike is no longer with us, so I don't want to besmirch his name, at least
Yeah,
any more than he already did.
exactly. The man went to jail over poisoning a tree, and he
Yep.
made no excuses. He was
Nope. No
defiant.
apologies for it. No
He is
apologies.
he is a habitual tree poisoner.
Yes.
If we look at this week's games,
Sure.
Iowa State and Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Scott Satterfield is an interesting coach to me. He leaves Louisville and takes pretty much the exact same job at Cincinnati. Changed and
Hmm.
just changed states, went like an hour away, same team
Hmm.
colors, same style to the programs. He's done a really good job.
Oh, he's done a terrific job. The win that they had over Kansas, the upset win over Kansas, was huge, winning in the final minute against Kansas. And he's got Cincinnati on track. The winner of this game between the two really has the inside track to play for the Big 12 championship, be one of the two teams to play for the Big 12 championship. He's done an amazing job there. His quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, is having a terrific season. I mean, he's got 10 passing touchdowns against just one interception, but he runs the ball really well. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns. Um, Again, huge performance against Kansas. Threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's done a great job at Cincinnati. This game is a compelling game. Both quarterbacks are really good. I've been on Rocco Becht all season. Guy's got over 1,100 yards rushing and I mean 1,100 yards throwing, excuse me, and the 7 touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns. And this is going to be a really good quarterback battle. Not saying it's going to be high scoring because the defenses are playing pretty well, but it's going to be a very entertaining offensive game.
It'll be interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to see where you have where Becht, like you said, the winner of this game is in pretty good state. I, I kind of see Cincinnati. There's something about this team. Like Satterfield he has given the team his own personality,
Yeah.
and I think they might come out in this one.
Well, and I think the game being at Cincinnati, not no one's going to look at Cincinnati and say, "Ooh, huge home field advantage." But
No,
the game being away from Iowa State,
it's
I think
huge.
matters.
I agree. Vanderbilt and Alabama. About a year ago, Alabama goes up to Nashville and has Diego Pavia drop 40 on them. And since then, Pavia has become America's new favorite quarterback. He mentioned how he's being mentored by Johnny Manziel, which is another topic for another time. But
As long as he's staying sober.
Pavia has exactly confidence. Pavia's confidence says that he doesn't think this game will be close. I agree with him, but not for the reasons that he might think. I think the win against Georgia gave this offense, even though I think Ryan Williams only had what 5 catches for 43 yards, something like that.
Right,
Like not,
right, right, right.
and Jeremy Bernard came up huge. I just think that Alabama goes to Nashville and beats Vanderbilt by 2 touchdowns
Well, and this one's
at Alabama.
in
Yeah,
Tuscaloosa. It's at Alabama, which makes all the difference in the world. Look, Vanderbilt, and I give Pavia credit. I give Coach Lee tons of credit. Vanderbilt used to be the equivalent of having a bye on your schedule, right? You could
true.
go to Vanderbilt and there would be more of the visiting fans than there were the Vandy fans. But they put the money into it and they invested in the program and it has paid off. Um, but look, I think the win over Georgia, we talked about it last week. I don't know if Kirby Smart's ever going to beat Alabama ever again, but this was certainly an opportunity to do it, and he didn't. Um, Kalen, I think if you're this gets the people off Kalen DeBoer's back for a little bit, which I didn't think he should have been under fire for anything. I mean, he lost the season opener to a pretty decent Florida State team. Not the end of the world, people. But I think the win over Georgia last week gives him some breathing room. You look at, I, I don't know the Heisman column has not published yet as you and I record this. I know Ty Simpson is on my 5-person ballot, and he should be on others. 11 touchdown passes with no interceptions and a 69% completion rate. Wow. You know, the guy's playing really well. But you're right. Diego Pavia brings the attention to it. He brings the swagger. He brings the big talk, and he's been able to back it up. I don't see it this time. I think this Alabama team is on a roll right now. No pun intended, roll tide. But I think that they are. I think come Monday of next week that Paul Finebaum will have to talk about other things. He'll have to talk about Alabama football again and not himself.
Yes,
Um, and so I think Alabama beats them by at least a touchdown.
I agree. Texas Tech and Houston. This is interesting because you have two teams who for the last couple of years in the Big 12, people consider afterthoughts, but money changes a lot, apparently.
It does. It does. And Texas Tech has it, and they spent it, and they did a lot of the things we talked about with front loading contract agreements so that they could get in their money, their payments legally before the House versus NCAA settlement came to be. And they put the money in the program, and good for them. Um, the biggest thing is the team is 4-0. Both of them actually are 4-0 and 1-0 in conference play. This was a game that if you and I sat here in August looking ahead to the schedule, we wouldn't have picked this out as a big deal, but it absolutely is right now. Um, Baron Morton, the quarterback for Texas Tech, having a great year. 11 touchdowns and I think two or three interceptions, 69% completion rate. But, but Houston's defense looks really, really good right now. 16th in the country in total defense. Texas Tech is a top 15 in total defense also. But Houston's defensive front looks really good right now. The game is in Houston, so there will be no tortillas thrown. And I think Texas Tech still pulls it out, but I'm not going. I'm not trying to hedge my alleged bets, but I wouldn't be surprised if Houston beats them.
I look at the Texas Tech offense and I look at the fact that they just seemingly score at will, and I look at the strength of the
Mm-hmm.
Houston defense. I think Houston slows Texas Tech down, but they don't beat them. I think it'll be a one score game, probably by within a touchdown. I think
That makes
Texas
sense.
Tech pulls it out late.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Miami and Florida State. It's
Yep.
is it me or did the loss of Virginia kind of take some of the air out of this game?
Little bit, little bit. I give more credit to Virginia than I do put the knock on Florida State. Virginia played inspired football, and played particularly well. Um, I don't get into I root for this or I root for that because I don't. It's we're not supposed to be doing that. But I got to admit, I could smile a little bit with Virginia getting the win for Tony Elliott. Man, the school has been so patient with him because they've had so much to deal with, and the loss of players a couple of years ago because of the tragic shooting, and he's been trying to hold this program together just by putting his arms around it and trying to hold it all in place. It was a huge, huge win for him and the program Friday night against Florida State. Now, having said that, was Florida State looking ahead to Miami? Did they think that Virginia, because Virginia has been at the bottom of the conference for a while, that this was a give me? They shouldn't have been because when you lost the way you did last year, basically most every week, you shouldn't be overlooking anybody. Um, but I think that you know, Castellanos has played a good season for Florida State. Again, brash, likes to talk a lot. Um, but he didn't play a great game against Virginia. The defensive front for Virginia had him running around quite a bit. And I'm going to tell you, Miami's front four is way better than anything Florida State has faced so far this year. So, I'm looking at, and I haven't been high on Carson Beck in his play this year, and for good reason. And I don't think he has to be great. I think he just has to be good enough because I think the pressure that the Miami defense can put on Castellanos is going to be decisive.
When I look at the Miami defense, I look at, like you said, their front, and you have Bain up front, who is probably gonna be a first round draft pick. Just
Yeah.
the relentlessness of him, and every time I hear his name, I was in my head, I would think, huh, he probably thinks this game is about him, Mr. Bain. Yes, but I just Miami, they just seem like they're a step better than Florida State, and I just think
They
that
are.
coming off the high of the Alabama win, I think Florida State is probably going to be that 6 to 8 win team, which is good. It's a lot better than 2 wins, but I think Miami
Oh,
takes this
yeah.
one.
It's a huge improvement. If they get to an 8-win season and get to a second tier bowl game, that's a huge improvement. I also think it matters Miami had a bye week while Florida State was getting beat in Virginia. Florida State gets Miami at home, and I always have that little voice in the back of my head about Coach Instacart, with Miami. Um, but he usually loses games he's not supposed to lose. This one, I think, could go either way. But here's the strange thing, too, with Clemson being as bad as they are right now. This Miami Florida State game is going to go a long way to the top spot, getting the top spot in the ACC,
Hmm.
assuming, Clemson ain't going to make it that far. Again, something we didn't see happening when the season started.
No, definitely. And when I look at just like you said, Miami, they're due for a loss. Like I do a inexplicable loss. It doesn't happen here.
Right.
Now, before we close, did you just a quick run around? Did you hear or
Sure.
read or know about Virginia Tech? Their board of directors off gave the athletic program $229 million in additional funding.
Yeah. Now, what they do with it is that's, you got the money, and that's half of the battle. The other half is spending it correctly. You can't the school cannot pony up more money for players because there are now guidelines in place signed off on by a judge with regard to revenue sharing. We all know there are ways around that, with regard to the NIL. You have the boosters and the collectives going and propping up a local business, giving them money to use one of the local players as a sponsor. It's going to go to upgrade facilities. It's going. I don't know if you've ever been to Blacksburg,
Hmm.
and I will be there this Saturday for Wake Forest at Virginia Tech, and I've been once before. It is a beautiful campus. There ain't much else in Blacksburg. It is a beautiful campus. The fan support is amazing. That whole thing with the Metallica music when they enter, that is legit, man. That is not TV hype. That is for real. The press box shakes when the crowd, and they fill the stadium whether the team's good or not. And of course, now Virginia Tech has got an interim coach, so um, the money is great. The money is going to be spent across multiple sports. What do you do with it? Do you upgrade the football facilities? That's going to cost you 60 million minimum. Basketball, so that you can compete. I would venture to guess it's going to go across several sports, but it is a tremendous investment. Basically, because the way I read the report was there are no specifics as to how you spend it. They're giving them the money. The athletic department gave them a blueprint of what their initial plans are. And then, that's that. We'll see where it goes from there. But it's a tremendous investment. Look, the athletic, and I get it. I'm huge, huge, huge into academics at universities. That's what they were built for. But the athletic department is the front porch to the university. It is the most visible because it's on TV every week. And I love your biology department. I love your science department, your medical school. I love all of those things. These successes can help pay for that because, yeah, you're going to get a medical foundation grant of X millions of dollars for your medical school, and phenomenal. This can help build a vision for the university that is public, that is out there for everybody to see, and that helps the university as a whole. It helps boost the admission rates, the application rates, rather, how many people want to go there, the fees you can charge, the going and getting money from donors, not just for athletics, but for the university as a whole. It is the front porch for the university because it's what everybody sees. So good for Virginia Tech. I hope it helps the university as a whole.
Exactly. Tone, what's coming up on Last Word and how can people interact with you on social media?
Yeah, they can get a hold of us by going on to lastwordonsports.com, clicking on the college football link. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. They can get me at Tony Bruin. Certainly, a lot of Wake Forest fans have found their way to me to complain about my coverage of last week's overtime loss to Georgia Tech because, yes, the ref missed a call. No, it didn't cost Wake Forest the game. And we've got the Heisman poll coming up, and we've got the bowl projection update, which will be publishing as you and I broadcast this. And real quick, real quick, something just occurred to me as you and I are have microphones. We got microphones and we're talking. That just occurred to me about Paul Finebaum. If he announces that he's running, he's got to leave his show like now. The minute he announces, he cannot stay on ESPN. There are federal election laws about it, and he can't stay on ESPN. There you go. That it popped up in my head watching you talking to your headset and knowing how he is and stuff. And if you were to announce that you're running for Congress, one, I would come work for you. I'd come work for your campaign. But two, you'd have to leave your show, and you know, doesn't work like that. So anyway, that's how they find us, and we've got great content and some previews of this week's games. We've got reporters all over the place. We even have our Penn State reporter who will be out in Los Angeles at my old home, the Rose Bowl, for the UCLA game. So we got them everywhere, people.
As always, Tone, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast.
All right, man. Be well.